I turned 70 the night my son told me I did not belong at my own table. The hostess at the restaurant smiled and asked for my name. I told her, Calvin Moore, ma'am, and she checked her screen, then her whole face brightened. She grabbed a stack of menus and said, "Right this way, they're already here, Mr. Moore," with that cheerful tone people use for birthdays and anniversaries. My knees complained a little as I followed her through the dining room. The place was a little fancier than anything I picked on my own. Low lights. White tablecloths. Soft music. A row of people in their weekend best along the wall. Then I saw them. Andre stood up first, buttoned shirt, new watch, that nervous smile he has when he is trying to sell something. Keisha sat next to him, hair neat, makeup careful, a folder by her elbow. My grandson Malik waved and shouted, "Grandpa," before Keisha hushed him and fixed his collar. Two of my church friends were there, Mr. Lewis and Deacon Harold, and Andre's coworker from the bank. A small crowd. Enough for a birthday. "Surprise, Dad," Andre said, and he walked over and hugged me. His arms were tight but his back stayed stiff. No real weight in the hug. More performance than comfort. I patted his shoulder anyway. "You did all this for me?" I asked. "Of course," he said. "You deserve it." We all sat. A server came for drink orders. Someone started a polite clap. Keisha gave a little speech about honoring Dad's life and showing appreciation. I watched her hands. They stayed close to that folder. The appetizers barely hit the table before the air changed. Conversations faded. Forks rested. Andre cleared his throat and straightened his back. "Dad," he said, "there's something important we need to talk about tonight." His eyes moved over the table, checking reactions. We wanted everyone here to support this. I looked around. Church brothers. Coworker. My grandson. People who had known me for years. People who had known me for months. Faces turned toward me and toward him. "Talk about what?" I asked. Andre glanced at Keisha. She nodded. He slid his hands together on the table. "Your situation," he said. "Your health. Your safety. The house. Everything. We need a plan before things get worse." There it was. No candle. No cake. A meeting. Keisha opened the folder and laid out glossy brochures. Pictures of smiling old people at round tables. Nurses in bright uniforms. Clean hallways. Big windows. "It is time we think about assisted living," she said. Her voice stayed calm, almost gentle. "You fall. You forget appointments. You drive too much. It is not safe for you to stay alone anymore." I listened. The room felt smaller. My hands rested on the table. I did not argue. I just watched them. Andre leaned forward, shoulders tight, voice low but firm. "Dad," he said, "you don't belong here anymore. Not alone in that house. Not with all that responsibility. It is time we move you somewhere safe." The table went quiet. No one reached for a glass. No one touched the bread. They waited for me to break. I stayed silent. Inside, something steady moved into place. Before all that talk about nursing homes and safety, my life was simple, steady, and familiar in a way that made sense to me. I woke up every morning before the sun finished rising, same as I had since I was a young man grinding double shifts. Old habits don't retire even when you do. Most mornings I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and the newspaper folded into thirds. The house was quiet, but not an empty kind of quiet. It held the echoes of my wife, Lorraine, her humming in the mornings, her footsteps in the hallway, the soft clatter of dishes when she thought I was still asleep. She'd been gone 9 years, but a home keeps the memory of a person long after the person is in the ground. I'd read the front page, check the weather, and look through the local section for any old neighbors who passed. When you reach my age, the obituary page becomes something like a roll call. You nod to names you knew and whisper a prayer, grateful you're still here another day. After breakfast, I take my time getting dressed. Not because I moved slow, but because I like to sit for a moment on the edge of the bed and think. I'd slip into my old work jeans and a button-up shirt, lace my boots, yes, boots, every day, rain or shine, and grab my keys. Whether I planned to do anything or not, I always dressed ready, as if the day might call for me at any moment. By 9 o'clock, I was usually out the door. Some days I walked around the block just to keep the joints moving. Other days I drove down to Moore's Auto and Tire, the shop I built from nothing back in the late 70s. The outside still had the same brick front and faded blue paint. The inside smelled of oil, hot rubber, and old wood, home, in its own way. Andre liked to tell people he ran the shop now. Technically, he handled day-to-day scheduling and paperwork, but ownership still sat squarely under my name. I'd given him responsibility, not the throne. But I didn't correct him when he boasted about being the boss. I told myself it didn't matter, that pride was something every son deserved to feel. The younger mechanic, a sharp boy named Terrence, always greeted me first. "Morning, Mr. Moore," he'd call out, wiping his hands on a cloth. "You here to keep us in line?" "Somebody gotta," I'd tell him. "Y'all would fall apart without me." He'd laugh because he knew it was half joke, half truth. I didn't do much heavy work anymore, age had its limits, but I'd supervise, check the books sometimes, or sit in the office chair Andre never bothered to warm up. Customers still asked for me by name. Some only trusted me with the final word on repairs. It made me feel useful. Not like a burden. Not like extra weight nobody wanted to carry. By lunchtime I'd be back home. Leftovers. A sandwich. Sometimes Miss Ruby, my neighbor of 20 years, would wave from her porch and invite me over for lemonade if the weather was good. Ruby talked straight but never with malice. She'd tell me when my hedges needed trimming, when my shirt wasn't tucked in right, and when she thought I looked tired. "You keeping yourself busy?" she'd ask. "As much as I can without making new problems," I'd answer. She'd nod like she understood exactly what I meant. Afternoons were slow, but they weren't empty. I'd do light yard work, clean out the garage, reorganize the old tool bench, or go through boxes of photographs Lorraine kept tucked away. Every picture from weddings to birthdays to backyard barbecues reminded me how fast life turns pages when you aren't watching closely. Andre had always been in those pictures, first a boy with scraped knees, then a teenager slouching through chores, then a young man finding his place. He had Lorraine's eyes but my shoulders, and for most of his life he treated me with respect without me having to ask for it. Then marriage and years added distance. Not anger, not conflict, just distance, like he had started walking a road I wasn't invited on. Still, Sundays brought us together. That was our ritual. Church in the morning, First Baptist on the corner of Auburn and Hill, the same place where I married Lorraine and where Andre was baptized. After service, the three of us, me, Andre, and Keisha, would have dinner at my house or theirs. Keisha always cooked nice meals, perfectly organized plates, napkins folded like hotel rooms. She'd talk about work, promotions she didn't get but deserved, and future plans. A lot of her sentences began with, "Once we get everything settled," though I never quite knew what everything meant. Andre would sit quieter, eating slow, lost in his thoughts. Sometimes he'd ask me how the shop was doing. Other times he didn't ask anything at all. He loved me, I believe that. But love can thin out, stretch too far, become strained without breaking. I could sense it, even if I didn't want to look at it too closely. My grandson Malik, though, he made every visit worth it. 6 years old, full of energy, asking me to show him car tricks or help fix his little toy cars. I'd sit on the floor, slow, but I'd get down there, and we'd push those cars across the rug like the whole world was just us two. "Grandpa, you fast," he'd say, even when I moved like a man twice my age. "Strong too," I'd tell him, flexing an arm that didn't bend as smooth as it used to. He'd laugh and try to copy the pose. Evenings at home were peaceful. I cooked simple meals, roasted chicken, beans, rice, watched the evening news, and called it a night early. Some folks can't stand silence, but silence kept me company. It reminded me of everything I'd lived through and everything I still had left to do. I never once thought of myself as someone who needed to be taken care of. I was aging, yes. Slowing down, yes. But not fading away. Not helpless. Not a man who needed to be moved anywhere for his safety. I thought my life was settled. Comfortable. Predictable. I didn't know, sitting in that calm, steady routine, that my own son and his wife had been planning something else entirely. Something that would turn all that quiet into a storm I didn't see coming. The first sign something had shifted came on a Tuesday afternoon that didn't seem special in any way. Andre stopped by the house unannounced. He walked in without knocking, the way family does, but he didn't carry the same warmth he used to. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't sit. He didn't even look around. He just stood in the living room like he was there for an appointment. "Dad," he said, "we need to talk about your driving." I was sitting in my recliner, polishing the armrest out of habit. I looked up slowly. "What about it? You shouldn't be doing it as much anymore." I let the sentence hang there. "Why is that?" He didn't have a reason ready. Not a real one. He glanced at the family photos on the wall, as if they might remind him why he was here, then he rubbed the back of his neck. "It's just safer if you don't." I asked, "Has something happened? Did you hear something? Did somebody say I was driving reckless?" "No," he said quickly. "Nothing like that." "So what is it?" He exhaled, short and impatient. "Dad, you're almost 70. And Keisha said, well, we just think you should take it easy. More rest. Less running around." That phrase, that Keisha said, was becoming more common. I nodded slowly, not agreeing, just acknowledging the sound of his voice. "I'll keep that in mind." He didn't push back. He didn't argue. He just nodded, relieved somehow, like he had checked something off a list. That was the first clue. The second came a week later at Sunday dinner. We were sitting at their dining table, the one too white to ever be touched comfortably. Malik was coloring on the floor, humming something from a cartoon. Keisha glided around the kitchen like she was rehearsing for a cooking show. Andre sat with his phone face down beside his plate, something he never used to do. We ate in that polite kind of quiet that feels like everyone is thinking about something else. Halfway through the meal, Keisha looked at me with a tight smile. "Mr. Moore, do you ever feel lonely in that house by yourself?" I paused, fork in the air. "No more lonely than anyone who loses a spouse," I said. "But I manage." She nodded sympathetically, but the sympathy didn't reach her eyes. "Have you ever considered living somewhere more supportive?" Andre stiffened. I had the sense this wasn't the first time she'd raised that topic with him. "Supportive?" I asked. "I've supported myself my whole life." "What kind of support are we talking about?" "Oh, I just mean community. Help with cooking, cleaning, medication reminders." She kept her tone light. "Things older folks often need." I looked down at my plate. My food suddenly tasted like paper. "I can still cook," I said. "I can still clean. And I don't take any medications except a blood pressure pill at night." Didn't realize that made me infirm. A short silence stretched out. Keisha took a sip of wine. "Just something to think about." But I could feel it. She wasn't offering an idea, she was planting a seed she intended to grow. The third clue arrived without intention, the way truth often does, quietly, in passing. I had stopped by the auto shop to drop off some paperwork and check on the new alignment machine. I walked in through the back, same as always, and heard Andre's voice. "Liquidating assets over the next few months," he was saying. "Yes, the house too." "Well, technically it's not in my name yet, but we're working on." He saw me before I heard the rest. "Dad," he said too loudly, too brightly. Didn't hear you come in. Sounded like a private conversation, I said. Oh no, no. Just, business stuff. He slid a stack of papers into his desk drawer a little too fast. The banker on the phone must have sensed it, because Andre cleared his throat and said, "Sir, can I call you back later?" When he hung up, he plastered on another smile. "What brings you by?" I held up the envelope. "The insurance renewal for the shop." "Oh. Right. Thanks. I was gonna get that soon." He took it without looking me in the eye. "You talking about selling something?" I asked plainly. No. Just talking options. Financial planning." "For what?" "Future stuff." That vague answer again. I nodded, but this time the nod meant something different. It meant I understood he was hiding something. And he knew I knew. The fourth clue was the one that stayed in my chest like a weight. Mail. A simple envelope. Delivered to my house but addressed to Andre. The return address was a senior care facility on the north side of town. I opened it because I assumed it was a billing error. Andre sometimes used my address for package deliveries. But inside, I found a letter. "Dear Mr. Moore, thank you for touring our facility. We appreciate your interest in arranging future care for your father, Mr. Calvin Moore." The rest blurred. My pulse beat slow and heavy. I folded the paper carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and sat in my kitchen for a long time. Andre and Keisha had toured a nursing home. For me. Not with me. Not after asking me. Not out of worry. But out of planning. Planning for a future where I wasn't in my own home. A future they had mapped out without my voice. Without my knowledge. Without my dignity. But the final clue, the one that tied all the others into something undeniable, came by accident. I went to Andre's house one evening because he hadn't returned my call. I thought maybe something was wrong. I never walked in without knocking, so I rang the bell. No answer. I rang again. Still nothing. The lights were on, though, and their car was in the driveway. I tried the door. It was unlocked. Inside, I heard voices from the hallway near the kitchen. "We can't keep waiting," Keisha said, voice sharp, urgent. "He's getting older. He could fall. He could forget something on the stove. We can't wait until he hurts himself before doing something." Andre sighed. "But it feels wrong, Keisha. He's still okay. He's still moving around." "Temporarily," she snapped. "We have a child to raise, a mortgage, bills, and a future. We need the money tied up in that house and that old shop. This is responsible planning, not cruelty." "He won't like it," Andre whispered. "He doesn't have to," she shot back. "He'll adjust. People do." I didn't step forward. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't make a sound. I turned and walked out as quietly as I had walked in. My own son was planning to move me out and sell the only two things in this world I had left to pass on. And he hadn't even found the courage to tell me. That was when the suspicion stopped being suspicion. That was when something inside me stopped bending. That was when I understood. They weren't discussing my future. They were deciding it. Without me. 2 days passed after I heard Andre and Keisha talking in that kitchen. 2 long days where I moved through my routines like a man walking underwater, slow, steady, muted. The world around me didn't look different, but I did. Something inside had shifted. Not broken. Not yet. Just moved out of place. I cooked breakfast the same way. Read the newspaper the same way. Sat on the porch swing in the evenings the same way. But my hands felt heavier on every page I turned, and every sound in the neighborhood made me listen harder, like I was waiting for something to fall apart. A father shouldn't have to listen carefully to see his own son's intentions. A father shouldn't feel the need to study his child the way you study a stranger in a waiting room. But that's what betrayal does. It turns the familiar into something you have to watch. I didn't confront Andre. I didn't call or pretend I hadn't heard what I heard. I let the silence stretch. I let it say the things I wasn't ready to speak. On the third day, I returned to the auto shop, needing to anchor myself in something older than the trouble forming in my home. Terrence greeted me, same as always. "Morning, Mr. Moore," he said, cheerful as ever. "Alignment machines acting better today. Thanks for helping us with that." I smiled faintly. Glad to hear it. But the peace didn't stay. Andre walked in from the office area a moment later, surprised to see me. He smiled too quickly, the way a man smiles when he isn't ready for a conversation. "Oh, hey Dad," he said. "Didn't expect you this morning." "I see that," I said. He rubbed his palms together the way he always did when he was nervous. "Everything okay at home?" "Everything's the same." He nodded, but he didn't know what to do with my tone. He wasn't used to me being guarded. He stood there shifting his feet like a child waiting for a teacher to speak. "Need anything?" he asked. "No," I said. "I'm just looking around." He hesitated, then gave me a pat on the shoulder. "Well, you know where to find me." He walked back into the office, and he closed the door behind him. That small act told me everything. Andre only closed the office door when he didn't want to be bothered. I sat on the work stool near the tool bench. I didn't listen through the door, but I didn't need to. Every time the phone rang, every time he lowered his voice, every time he sighed, I heard a different truth behind it. He wasn't planning my care. He wasn't planning my comfort. He was planning my removal. And Keisha, she was pushing the plan along like someone scrubbing a stain off a wall. By midday I decided to leave. I didn't want Andre asking questions. I didn't want Terrence picking up the tension. I wanted space to think. But when I got home, something waited for me. A second letter. Same senior care facility. Same return address. This one addressed directly to me. "Dear Mr. Moore, we appreciate your interest in finalizing the paperwork necessary for a successful transition into our community. We understand you wish to review the financial details with your son and daughter-in-law." I stopped reading. I didn't finish the paragraph. I didn't have to. Someone had submitted my name. Someone had put my address and contact information on the intake form. Someone had signed enough boxes for the facility to assume I was ready to finalize. And I knew exactly who that someone was. I took the letter, sat at the table, and laid out everything in front of me, the brochures I had been quietly handed on past Sundays, the notes from the envelope addressed to Andre, and now this. It was no longer suspicion. It was not a misunderstanding. It was not miscommunication. It was a plan. My son, my only child, was preparing the paperwork to remove me from my own home and place me somewhere else where he and his wife could control every part of my life. And the worst part wasn't the plan itself. It was the casual, rehearsed confidence that I would go along with it. Like I was too tired to resist. Too old to challenge. Too done with life to care. I sat looking at the papers until the sun moved across the kitchen window and the room turned the color of late afternoon. That stillness broke something open in my chest. Not heartbreak. Not yet. Something quieter. Grief. Not the grief of death. The grief of watching someone you raised turn into someone you don't recognize. That night I didn't sleep well. I tossed, turned, got up twice to get water. My mind kept circling one truth. My son was making decisions about me without me. The next morning I pulled out the old fireproof safe from under my bed. It scraped across the wooden floor, leaving a mark. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were the things Lorraine told me to keep safe: our marriage license, the deed to the house, the original registration for the shop, insurance papers, tax forms, the older version of my will. I opened the deed first. My name was there. Clear. Unambiguous. Next, the business license. My name again. I sat for a long time looking at those papers. Not out of pride, out of clarity. I had been letting Andre manage things. I had let him handle bills, handle small decisions at the shop, handle some conversations with the bank, handle the things that kept him feeling useful. And I let him because he was my son. But letting someone handle things is not the same as giving them ownership. And somewhere along the way, he forgot that difference. That afternoon, Miss Ruby came by with a casserole like she always did on Thursdays. "You've been quiet," she said, squinting at me the way older women do when they're diagnosing you with the truth. I shrugged. "Just thinking." "Uh-huh," she said, walking past me into the kitchen. "Men only say that when something heavy's sitting on their chest." "You got that look." I didn't want to tell her, but I also didn't want to carry the silence alone. So I told her the part that mattered. "They're planning something," I said. "For me." "Without me." She raised one eyebrow. "That daughter-in-law of yours always been too much in other people's business. Andre's going along with it." Ruby set the casserole down and leaned both hands on the counter. "Baby, you better protect yourself. I've been telling you for years, keep them papers up to date. Folks get bold when they think you don't know your rights." "I know," I said quietly. "Do you?" she asked, real soft but real firm. I didn't answer. She pointed at the fireproof safe still open on the table. "That right there is your life's work. Don't let nobody walk you out of what you built. You hear me?" I nodded. "You need a lawyer," she added. "A real one. Someone you trust." I knew she was right. I knew it the moment she said it. The following morning, I drove to the office of Attorney Samuel Price, a man who had been bringing his car to my shop for nearly 20 years. When Lorraine was sick, he helped me review insurance documents. After she passed, he walked me through probate with patience and respect. He stood when I came into his office. "Mr. Moore," he said warmly. "What brings you in? Everything all right?" I sat down slowly. "I need some help. Some paperwork checked." He listened as I explained, not every detail, but enough. He didn't judge. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he folded his hands. "You want to secure everything in your name and ensure no one can move you anywhere without your explicit consent," he summarized. "Yes." He nodded. "That is absolutely doable. And it is your right." He looked me directly in the eye. "This isn't abandonment, Mr. Moore. This is protection. For yourself." He helped me update my will. He notarized a declaration that I had full mental and physical capacity. He reviewed the home deed and business property details. He set up legal safeguards requiring my signature and a medical evaluation before any move could be made on my behalf. By the time I left his office, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger. Not vengeance. Not righteousness. Control. Quiet, steady, earned control. I didn't tell Andre. I didn't tell Keisha. I didn't even tell Miss Ruby the full extent. I simply waited. Waited for the moment they would bring the truth to me. Waited for the night that would become my birthday dinner. Waited to see how far they'd go. And they went further than I thought. Because when a man believes he has power over you, he stops noticing when you stand up. Once I walked out of Attorney Price's office with those new papers in my hand, I did not feel lighter. People think protection brings relief right away. It does not. It brings responsibility. I knew now that I could stop what Andre and Keisha were planning, but I still had to live with the fact that they had planned it at all. I put the folder on my kitchen table and sat down. The house was silent except for the refrigerator humming in the corner. My name sat there on the deed, the will, the declaration of capacity, clear and firm. Those pages told the world I was still in charge of my life. They did not explain why my son forgot that. I spent that evening walking from room to room, not rushing, just looking. The family photos. The old couch. Lorraine's favorite chair by the window. The nick in the hallway where Andre crashed his toy car when he was 8. Every mark had a history. I realized that if I had not moved when Lorraine died, it was not because I was stubborn. It was because this place was the record of my life. I refused to become a visitor in my own record. The next day, I locked the new legal documents in the fireproof safe, but I made a second set of copies. Those copies went into a plain brown folder I could carry with me without drawing attention. I slid the folder into the back of my bedroom closet, behind a suit I only wore to weddings and funerals. I told myself, if they ever try to force my hand in public, I will answer in public. That was not revenge. That was self-respect. Over the next week, I made small changes. I visited the shop and pulled Terrence aside one morning when Andre was in the office. "You like working here?" I asked. "Yes, sir," he said. "Learned more from this place than I did in those online courses." I nodded. "You ever thought about what you want 5, 10 years from now?" He hesitated, then smiled. "Honestly, Mr. Moore, I always thought, if I could run a place like this one day, that would be enough for me. Just do good work, treat people right, make a decent living." I looked at him a little longer. He was in his mid-20s, solid, attentive. No rush in his movements. No shortcuts in his work. "That might be possible," I said. "Not tomorrow. Not next week. But one day. You keep doing what you're doing. Do not let anyone push you into cutting corners. You understand me?" "Yes, sir. I understand." He did not know why I said it. But I did. I needed to know that if something happened between me and Andre, the shop would not fall apart. I wanted at least one younger man in my life who understood respect without asking to take what was not his. Later that afternoon, when Andre came out of the office, he said, "You know, Dad, we should think about modernizing the shop. New branding, maybe even selling the lot and moving somewhere busier." "Busy is not always better," I said. "It is more profitable," he replied. "Profitable for who?" I asked. He blinked. He did not answer. He shrugged it off like it was just an idea. But I heard the urgency under it. He needed access to what the shop could bring him. Not what it meant. What it could bring him. It made the line between us clearer. On Sunday, I went to church as usual. The choir sang. The pastor preached. I listened, but my mind sat on a different message than the one from the pulpit. After service, I waited until the crowd thinned, then stopped Pastor Williams near the side door. "Pastor, you got a minute?" I asked. "For you, always," he said. We stepped into his small office. I closed the door. I did not tell him every detail. I did not want to turn my son into a subject for other people to discuss, but I told him the shape of it. "My son and his wife are making plans for me," I said. Plans I did not agree to. Plans that move me out of my home and into a facility I did not ask for. He listened with his hands folded, elbows on his desk. "Have you told them you know?" he asked. "Not yet." "Do you still have legal control over your life and property?" "Yes," I said. "I made sure of that this week." He nodded slowly. "Then you are not powerless. The question is not what they can do to you. The question is what you are willing to accept." I was quiet. "Sometimes," he continued, "people confuse helping with controlling. Sometimes they dress their fear as responsibility. But that does not excuse disrespect. Especially not toward a parent. I keep asking myself if I did something wrong raising him," I said. He shook his head. "You raised a man. What he does with that manhood is on him." He paused, then added, "You do not have to yell to reclaim your place, Brother Moore. You just have to stand where you were always meant to stand and not move when somebody else tells you to." That sentence stayed with me. I did not need to fight Andre. I needed to stop moving out of his way. A few days later, Andre called. "Hey, Dad," he said, trying to sound casual. You busy? Not really, I answered. So, your birthday's coming up, he went on. Keisha and I want to do something special for you. Nothing big. Just a nice dinner. A dinner, I repeated. Yeah, he said. At that restaurant on Peachtree. The one with the big booths. We'll invite a few people. You know, close family, couple folks from church. Just to celebrate. I listened to his words and heard everything he did not say. Sounds thoughtful, I said. Who all is coming? Me, Keisha, Malik, of course. We asked Mr. Lewis and Deacon Harold because we know you like having them around. I might bring a coworker or two from the bank. You'll like them. Good people. He listed them like witnesses. And what exactly are we celebrating? I asked, my voice even. Your 70th, Dad, he said quickly. You made it to 70. That is worth something. I thought I was almost too old to be left alone, I said quietly. He paused. I heard his breath catch. That is not what I meant, he said. We just care about you. We will talk at dinner, I told him. Face to face. Good, he said, relieved. Good. So you will be there? Yes, I said. I will be there. When I hung up, I did not feel tricked. I already knew what they were planning. I understood now that this dinner was not really for celebration. It was for presentation. They wanted an audience when they unveiled their solution. They thought they were walking me into a controlled moment. They did not realize I had already prepared my own. On the afternoon of the dinner, Miss Ruby came by again. You ready for this little show they putting on? She asked. I am, I said. You taking your papers? Yes. She looked me in the eye. Remember, you do not owe them a performance. You do not have to explain your worth. You just state the facts. Calm. That is the only way I know how, I answered. She smiled sadly. I know. That is why this hurts you so much. I did not respond. Some truths do not need a reply. I went to my bedroom and opened the closet. The brown folder waited behind that old suit. I took the suit out, brushed it off, and held it up. It still fit well enough, even if it rested a little looser on the shoulders now. I laid it on the bed and opened the folder. Inside it, I placed a copy of the deed to the house, a copy of the business property documents, the updated will, the declaration stating I was of sound mind and capable of managing my own affairs, a letter from Attorney Price summarizing my legal rights regarding residences and care. I read each page again, slowly. Not because I doubted them, but because I wanted to walk into that restaurant knowing exactly where I stood. I did not want to rely on memory. I wanted facts. I slid the folder into the inside pocket of my suit jacket. The weight of it felt solid against my chest. In the mirror, I saw an older man. Wrinkles. Gray at the temples. A little stiffness in the neck when I adjusted my collar. But I also saw the same eyes that looked out over the first acre of land I bought with Lorraine, the same hands that signed the first lease on the shop, the same back that carried Andre on long walks when he was too tired to keep up. I was not finished. I did not know what Andre expected to see that night, a fragile man, scared and grateful that someone else was taking charge. That was not who I saw in the mirror. I saw a man who had lived enough years to know when he was being pushed out of his own story. On the drive to the restaurant, I kept the radio off. The city moved around me, buses, headlights, people crossing streets with grocery bags and backpacks. Life went on, as always. I realized something important in that quiet drive. Whatever happened at that dinner, I still had to live with myself afterward. If I shouted, if I cursed, if I broke down, if I tried to shame my son in front of everyone, I might win the moment but lose a part of myself I had spent a lifetime building. The calm. The steadiness. The way I faced problems without trying to hurt anyone more than necessary. I decided I would not meet disrespect with cruelty. I would meet it with clarity. They could call it stubborn. They could call it ungrateful. They could call it anything they wanted. The law would call it mine. My life. My house. My business. My choice. I parked the car a little way down from the restaurant and sat for a minute with the engine off. I could see the front doors from where I sat. People walked in and out, laughing, dressed up, holding hands. Nobody looking at those doors expected their loved ones to turn into judges. I took a slow breath, reached into my jacket, felt the edge of the folder, and then stepped out of the car. My knees reminded me of my age when I straightened up, but they worked. I fixed my tie, closed the car door, and walked toward the entrance. I was not walking toward a plea. I was walking toward a decision. My decision. The hostess looked up when I stepped inside and asked for my name. I gave it. She smiled and told me they were already there. I followed her through the dining room, the weight of the documents steady against my chest, my steps measured, my mind clear. Whatever words my son had prepared, whatever script he and Keisha had rehearsed, whatever phrases about safety and responsibility they planned to use, I was ready. I was not arriving as a man begging to stay in his home. I was arriving as the man who owned it. When the hostess led me to the far side of the dining room, everyone was already seated: Andre, Keisha, Malik, a few church elders, 2 of Andre's co-workers. A small crowd, the kind you gather when you want witnesses but not too many questions. Andre stood to greet me. He hugged me the same way he had hugged me at graduation ceremonies and school plays, arms around me, but the rest of him stiff, as if the gesture was more duty than warmth. "Happy birthday, Dad," he said. I smiled. "Thank you, son." I said it steadily. No tremor. No suspicion in my voice. I wanted him relaxed. I wanted him confident. People will dig their own hole deeper if they believe you haven't noticed the shovel. We all sat. The server brought water, menus, and a polite happy birthday. Then the table settled into a quiet that didn't belong at a celebration. No laughter. No toasts. Keisha kept her hand on the folder beside her plate like it was a clutch purse she was afraid someone might steal. Malik slid off his chair and hugged my arm. "Grandpa, I drew you something." He handed me a folded piece of paper with crayon scribbles of a man in a garden. "That's beautiful," I said, touching his shoulder. "Thank you, little man." Keisha gently pulled him back to his chair with a tight smile. "Grandpa will look at it later. Let's let him settle." The air stiffened again. Mr. Lewis from church cleared his throat. "Calvin, it's good to see you dressed up like the old days." I smiled. I figured a night out deserved a clean suit. He nodded, but his eyes drifted between me and Andre. Even he could feel the tension. After appetizers were set down, but hardly touched, Andre tapped his fork lightly on his glass. Not loud. Just enough to claim the room. "So," he began. "Before we eat, I want to thank everyone for coming. It means a lot to celebrate Dad's 70th with the people who've been part of his life." There were polite nods around the table. Then he inhaled deeply, the way a man does when he's about to cross a line he spent weeks convincing himself was reasonable. We also wanted to use this moment to talk about something important regarding Dad's future. Mr. Lewis blinked. Deacon Harold looked up slowly. One of Andre's co-workers shifted in his seat. But no one said a word. Andre continued, voice steady and rehearsed. "Dad has been living alone for nearly a decade now, and we feel it's time to discuss a safer arrangement, one that keeps him supported and protected." Supported. Protected. 2 words always used when someone is preparing to take something away. Keisha opened the folder beside her and pulled out glossy pamphlets. They slid across the table like evidence in a trial. "These are some excellent facilities," she said. "Beautiful places with professional staff, activities, and on-site medical care." She laid out 3 brochures. Smiling seniors, manicured lawns, dining halls more cheerful than real life ever is. I kept my face still. She continued, we've toured them. We've reviewed their options. And honestly, this is what's best. For him. For us. For everybody. Everybody. Meaning them. Not me. Andre took a breath, looked directly at me, and said the words he had practiced. Dad, you don't belong alone in that house anymore. You don't belong in that neighborhood with all that responsibility. It's time to move somewhere safe. Somewhere you'll be cared for properly. Across the table, my church brothers sat in disbelief. Deacon Harold whispered, Lord have mercy. But Andre wasn't finished. We want to help you transition before something happens. Before you fall. Before you forget something on the stove. Before there's an emergency. Keisha chimed in. And before the house becomes unmanageable. The house. There it was. The real center of gravity in this plan. Andre cleared his throat again. We've already started the process. They're waiting for our final paperwork. My stomach didn't drop. My hands didn't shake. Instead, I felt something close to peace. Because he had brought us exactly where I needed him to. Into the open. Andre leaned back, relieved to have said it aloud. He thought silence meant compliance. He thought the room was drifting his way. For a moment, the only sound was the soft clinking of plates from other tables. Then I placed my hands on the table and spoke calmly. Are you finished, son? Andre nodded. I know it's a lot to take in, but I'm asking, I said gently, if you've said everything you came here to say. He straightened, confused. Yes. I think that covers it. I nodded slowly. Good. I reached into my suit jacket and pulled out my brown folder, the one he didn't know existed. Keisha's eyes tightened. Andre's throat bobbed. I placed the folder on the table in front of me and opened it. The first page I slid out was the deed to the house. My house. The second was the property record for the auto shop. My shop. The third was my updated will. And the fourth. My declaration of mental and physical capacity, signed and stamped by Attorney Price and a licensed evaluator. I set them down one by one, neat, deliberate, steady. When I spoke, my voice didn't waver. I appreciate the thought you and Keisha put into your presentation, I said. But let me make something clear for everyone at this table. I tapped the deed with one finger. My home belongs to me. Then the business property. My shop belongs to me. I tapped the declaration. And I am fully capable of managing my own life. Legally and medically. A silence fell across the table thicker than any church sermon. Andre swallowed hard. Dad, we were only trying to. I heard what you said. All of it, I replied. And I heard what you didn't say. I looked at Keisha. You're worried about money. About the mortgage. About your future. She stiffened but didn't deny it. I looked back at Andre. And you're worried about being responsible for me. He lowered his eyes. Then I sat up straighter, letting the weight of my years support the moment. But let me remind you both, being old does not make me yours. Aging does not make me property to manage. No raised voice. No shaking hands. Just truth. Nothing happens to me or my home or my shop without my consent. Not now. Not ever. Andre's coworker looked away. Mr. Lewis cleared his throat again. Malik stared at the table, sensing tension he didn't understand. Andre finally whispered, Dad, why didn't you tell us you knew? Because I wanted to see how far you'd go. The look on his face told me he understood exactly what that meant. I folded the documents back into my folder and closed it. Now, I said, if this dinner is truly about celebrating my life, then let's eat. No one moved. Not a single hand lifted a fork. Keisha quietly gathered her brochures, one by one, stacking them like broken plates. Andre sat frozen in the silence he had created. And I sat there calm, steady, and still in possession of everything they thought they could take. The day after the dinner, I woke up before sunrise as I always did. The house was quiet, the same way it had been for years. But I felt different. Lighter. Not joyful, no betrayal ever gives you joy, but settled. Like a man who finally puts down a load he's been carrying in silence. I made my coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the steam rising from the cup. That dining room scene replayed once or twice in my mind, not with anger, but with clarity. Andre's voice. Keisha's rehearsed lines. The weight of the brochures sliding across the table. And then the silence after I laid out my documents. I didn't regret staying calm. I didn't regret speaking the truth without raising my voice. I didn't regret letting them show me who they had become before I showed them who I still was. What I did feel, though, was distance. Necessary distance. The kind you don't announce. The kind that grows naturally when someone shows you they can't be trusted with the soft parts of your life. Around mid-morning, Andre called. His name lit up the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. "Dad," he said, voice low, "can we talk?" "We can," I replied, but I didn't offer more. There was a pause. Then a sigh. I'm sorry for how last night went." "How it went," I repeated. "Or what it was." He didn't answer immediately. And that told me enough. After a moment, he said, "We thought we were doing the right thing." "For who?" I asked quietly. "For me? Or for you too?" Silence again. I could hear him breathing, hear him struggling with the weight of what he had done. But I didn't jump in to soothe him. I didn't offer him comfort at the cost of my own dignity. Not this time. After a few seconds, I said, "Andre, you made plans for my life without asking me if I needed help. That is not care. That is control." "Dad, I know." "No," I interrupted gently. "You don't know. But you will. With time." Another long pause. "Can I come by later?" he asked. "Not today," I said, calm as ever. "Give it a little time." He swallowed. "Okay. I understand." We ended the call with no promises, no big declarations. Just the truth sitting between us like a table neither of us was ready to approach yet. I didn't see Andre or Keisha for a few weeks. And honestly, that was the blessing I didn't know I needed. Sometimes healing doesn't come from closeness. It comes from space. During those weeks, I found new rhythms. I hired a young man from church, Jerome, to help with yard work on Saturdays. Not because I needed it desperately, but because it felt good to accept help on my terms, not out of fear, not out of pressure, but out of choice. I stopped by the auto shop twice a week, spending more time with Terrence, teaching him little things I learned over decades, how to listen to an engine before touching it, how to talk to customers with respect, how to never overcharge a single mother just because you can. "Mr. Moore," he said one afternoon, "you're like the shop's compass. When you hear, everything feels straight." I smiled. "Then I guess I'll keep coming around." At church, Pastor Williams checked on me with those small nods older men give each other when they understand more than they say. Miss Ruby brought me meals on Sundays, pretending it was because she accidentally cooked too much, though we both knew she did it to see that I was all right. And slowly, that tightness in my chest started to ease. Not because everything was fixed, but because I was living by my own hand again. 3 weeks after the dinner, Andre finally came by. Not with Keisha. Not with a plan. Just him. He stood on my porch like a boy who used to knock after coming home late from high school. He didn't step in until I told him to. We sat in the living room. He looked around, the same pictures, the same furniture, the same history he tried to remove me from. "Dad," he said quietly, "I'm sorry." "For what part?" I asked. "For all of it," he answered. "For talking about moving you without asking you. For assuming I knew better than you. For thinking I had the right to decide what happens in your life. And the house? I asked. He exhaled sharply. Yeah. That too. I nodded, not forgiving, just acknowledging. I was scared, he said. Scared of losing you. Scared of being responsible. Scared of what could happen if something went wrong while you were alone. That fear is human, I replied. But your choices were not. He lowered his head. I don't expect you to forget it, he said. I just want the chance to do better. I didn't give him an answer that day. Not yes. Not no. Instead, I said, respect is the minimum. If you can give me that, we'll be all right. He nodded, tears forming but not falling. He stayed a little while longer, talking about work, about Malik, about little things that were safe to say. When he left, I watched him walk to his car with a slower step than usual, like the weight of the truth had finally settled on him. Healing didn't come through apologies. It came through boundaries. Stillness. Self-respect. Living my life without surrendering it. And piece by piece, day by day, I felt something steady return inside me. Not the old version of fatherhood where children lean on you for everything. Not the fantasy version where families never disappoint each other. Something simpler. Dignity that nobody could take. Growing old teaches you many things, but one lesson stands above the rest. People don't always break your heart through anger. Sometimes they break it through paperwork. Through decisions made in rooms you weren't invited into. Through the belief that your age has erased your voice. That night at the restaurant, when my son told me I didn't belong in my own home anymore, I didn't feel weak. I didn't feel small. I felt a line being drawn. Not by him, but by me. It reminded me that dignity doesn't shout. It doesn't beg. It doesn't fight for approval. Dignity stands up, lays out the truth, and lets the room adjust to it. In the end, my son and we're working on something new. Not a perfect relationship. Not the one we once had. But something honest. Something where respect isn't optional. And as for me, I still wake up in my own bed. Still make my own breakfast. Still walk my own floors. Still lock my own doors at night. Because a man shouldn't have to leave his home until he decides he's ready. Not when he's capable. Not when he's standing. Not when he still knows who he is. So I'll leave you with this question, the same one I've been carrying since that night. If the people you love tried to make decisions about your life without you, would you stay silent, or would you stand up the way I did? Tell me your answer in the comments. And if my story touched something in you, if it reminded you of your worth or your rights, or the quiet strength you still carry inside, then subscribe, like, and share this story. Because I've lived long enough to know one thing for certain. Your life is still yours. And you don't let anybody take it before you're ready.